This episode, we have special guest Genesis Cruz, the middle school director at Southwest Church. Today, she's going to talk about what discipleship looks like for her. So, Genesis, why don't you start by talking about your background a bit?
Thank you. Hi, Jacob. Thank you for having me today. Wow. I've been thinking about this all week because we talked about this a week ago, and I thought, wow, I get to diversify your interviews.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Yes, my name is Genesis Cruz. I'm the middle school director at Southwest Church. And I've been doing that for a little over, I think, 10 months now, almost a year. And my background, I mean, I was a photographer before this. I was a full-time photographer. I don't have a ministry degree, which I know will appall many people that are probably listening to this. And I would say that I was a high-level volunteer at my church, and I have been for several years since I got saved. And um, God presented this opportunity to be a director at Southwest Church, and my heart leapt, and I said yes. And it's been history since then.
Definitely. What were you volunteering in before?
Before becoming middle school director, I was volunteering with students ministry as well. So I was a small group leader for seventh grade girls. But I've also been part of the children's ministry. So I was small group leading and teaching the fourth and fifth graders, which was kind of cool because a lot of them ended up moving up with me when I became the middle school director. So that was really neat. But I also did worship ministry. So I've been singing for many years. That's actually where I started. I was 18 when I came to Jesus, and the first ministry that I got involved with was worship ministry. I mean, the church was like, "All right, cool, you're saved. Can you sing?" Yes. All right. See you next week on Tuesday. And that's literally how that went. So I've very early on when I got saved, I was propelled into ministry, and I haven't stopped since then.
Awesome. So, you've worked with fourth and fifth and also with junior high. What would you say are some of the biggest maturity, developmental, and just behavioral differences with handling those two different groups?
Oh man. So there is a huge difference between fourth and fifth grade and sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. I understand that they're only a few years apart, but it is night and day. I mean, fourth and fifth graders are still super innocent. They are exposed to things at school. We are all aware of that. But it's nothing like what's waiting for them in sixth grade. Sixth grade is a culture shock for them. And so, I mean, you would know this, Jacob. The sixth graders at the beginning are not the same sixth graders now, right? They've gone through so many things at school as middle schoolers. So, definitely huge gap developmentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically. A lot of them have physically grown in such a short amount of time. So they're two different people between the ages of 9, 10, and 11, 12. It's a huge difference. And I think middle schoolers are amazing. I know a lot of people don't feel that way. I think a lot of people feel that they're very immature, that you can't carry a conversation with them. But if you stay long enough, you realize that you can. And once you build trust, rapport, and just really delve into discipleship with them, they respond sometimes even better than adults. So I love the fact that with middle school age students, I can still have fun. They're not too cool for school, right? High schoolers. I think you have to go through a background check, social security, blood test to make sure that you are cool enough to speak to them and to disciple them. With middle schoolers, they're really just asking, hey, do you like me? Cool, you actually like me. All right, let's be friends. So I love that age group. They're amazing.
Definitely. So, why don't you tell me about what you're doing at Southwest?
All right. What am I not doing? As middle school director, my job is to plan, execute all events, all events, discipleship points for middle school age students. And that looks like in the form of I have an 11 a.m. service on Sunday and also an evening service for our students as well, where I teach both. It looks like recruiting and teaching volunteers, which has been probably, we'll get there, but that's probably been the hardest part of this journey. And I'm learning that. um, that also looks like what I do is I actually go into the middle schools during the week. So I spend some time at Palm Desert Middle. I spend some time at DRA. I teach there as well. So a lot of teaching all throughout the week. And that also looks like one-on-ones with my girls. So I do one-on-one discipleship throughout the week where I either pick up students from school, take them out for coffee. I just got back from another discipleship with one of my girls every Saturday morning. We get together. I also, not only that, I'm like making sure I cover all the points here. Not only that, I'm also really involved with everything in my church. So not only I'm involved with sermon texts, which means I sit in with all the pastors every week and we look at what's being taught on Sunday. So it's a really great and like learning environment for myself. I'm also do pastor of the day, in which I get scheduled throughout the month to be the pastor on duty, in which what that means is all calls that go to the church come to me that day. So whether that means I am hearing someone's story and they just need someone to talk to, right? Someone to pray with, or if that means I'm referring them out to counseling, if I'm referring them out to different small groups or just different resources that can help them further than what I can at that moment, right? So middle school director looks like many, many things for me. And yeah, I think every day is a learning like day. Like there's times where I'm like, oh, I do that too. Okay, sounds great.
Definitely. What's it like
Yeah.
being a small group leader?
It's the best thing. If I could small group lead, and I love it. I love it. I have my group of girls. They vary anywhere from maybe 8 to sometimes up to 14. Um, it looks like just being a safe place. That's what we do. We open up the word, right? Like we look at life, what is happening in their life, and Genesis may not have the answers all the time, but the Bible does. So let's open up the word and let's see what God has for you, right? Not what Genesis has for you, but what God has for you. So it looks like text messages and calls at 11 o'clock at night because, hey, Jen, something just happened and I need to talk about it. All right, that's what I'm here for, right? It looks like taking students home because their parents are too busy and it's like, you know what, no, let me get you to church because I know I want you there, so let me pick you up and take you home. So it looks like late nights dropping off students. What I'd say is my life as a small group leader is doing the work and actually like boots on the ground and let's do this. It also looks like it's 24/7. It doesn't stop. But I mean, we're Christian, and that is part of discipleship. It doesn't stop. There's no clock in or clock out time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, you're definitely living life with the people around you. So,
Totally.
for sure.
Yeah.
So on that, what are some of the lessons that the Lord has taught you along the way?
Ooh, he continues to teach me. Well, we're always students, right? So, as someone who came into this position without a ministry degree, I've gone through a lot of self-doubt, right? Like imposter syndrome, 24/7. I have a hard time with that. I mean, man, I've had to tell people who have a Bible degree, hey, maybe you should say it this way, or maybe we should. And so that's something that God continues to teach me, and He continues to show me grace and love. And at the end of the day, um, I think I'm actively learning that everybody is called to minister. And I know I've heard it over and over again that that is our job. But I think we always tend to say, no, these people can minister. These people can do the work. You know, I can sit here and support all day and do all these other things, but yeah, no, these people are called. So I think that has been a big learning curve for me, is being in a leadership position, being in full-time vocational ministry, my life changing from one day to the next, and just accepting the call that God has over my life and being comfortable with being super uncomfortable with almost everything that I do. And the sweet part of that has been that because I feel so uncomfortable, I can't go anywhere else. I have to lean on God. You need to be here. You need to help me out here, because there's no way that Genesis can do this on her own. So that's been the really sweet space for me, because there's no other way that I could do this. So I think just a really deep dependence on God has been something that I've learned. Another thing that I touched on earlier was volunteers. I guess I never, being someone who was a volunteer, always, I was the volunteer that was, you didn't need to ask me to be there. I was always there. I'm like, okay, how can I help? What do I do? And that's my husband too. So we're always volunteering together. Yeah. We were just, that was just our culture. Even in our previous churches, that was the culture, right? You serve, you serve, you serve, you serve. And I would say that, yes, I've had people walk alongside me, disciple me, teach me, and do all the things, right? But there was also many situations in which I wasn't taught, and I had to kind of learn as I went, because ministry is ministry and people keep going, and it's such a busy space if you allow it to be. And what I've learned is, wow, my job is not to be everything and to my students, because that's my comfort place. My comfort place is my students. I love doing one-on-ones with my kids. I love creating intentional moments with them. That's my comfort zone right there. Students, one-on-one, love it. I could do that all day. Now, put me in a room with a volunteer that I have to coach and I have to lead. That's hard for me, because I think because of what I spoke of earlier, right? All the imposter syndrome that God's like working in my life. And so understanding that I can't be everything to students, and my job is to build up volunteers so that they, like, multiply myself, right? So that they can reach out to more students than I could ever reach out to. That's been something that I've learned. And I continue to learn. And I've messed up a lot of things, and I'm like, okay, all right, note to self, right? And continue to extend grace to myself in that space as well. So I think those two have been like my biggest takeaways.
So how do you do that? How do you build up a volunteer?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm still asking myself that. No, just so what I am learning is discipleship, more one-on-one time with them, right? And I've come to understand that any good organization, any good church is going to have a really solid step-by-step for volunteers as well. And that's something that we're working on building for our future volunteers this coming season. I mean, me and the other director, we came in brand new. I think he's been here for almost a year, if not a year already. So we both don't have ministry degrees. So we're like learning as we go, right? We have amazing people that are teaching us and by our side, but we're still doing this thing brand new. So I think what we really want to do is have a more solid discipleship pathway for our volunteers so that they feel equipped. Because if I feel unequipped to do certain things, they probably do too. And um, so teaching them one on one, having more of a pathway for them so that they don't feel like they're just doing things on their own and figuring it out.
Hmm. Yeah, and I know that one of the ways that you do that is by having them teach, right? So tell me the
Yes.
process of that.
Well, having them teach, I try my best to offer opportunities, right? Like, hey guys, I do not want to be the only voice that they hear. I'm sure they get annoyed of me from time to time. I'm teaching at 11 a.m. A lot of my students go to the 11 a.m. and then come Sunday night, so they hear me twice in a day. I mean, my husband probably doesn't want to hear me that often either. So I try to encourage my leaders to teach, right? Come teach, let's do this. And that has been a one way, and that process looks like, okay, here's the scriptures. This is what we're trying to achieve. However, you still have the freedom, right? I will send them like in the curriculum outline to help them out. And I let them know, hey, you can go word for word with this, or please, the Holy Spirit resides in you. You have the freedom to teach, right? As long as you're not as long as you're not blaspheming, right? So I try to emulate what I see in sermon text, which is, all right, what are you teaching? To like talk me through what you're doing here, right? And
Hmm.
so it allows them to kind of talk about, okay, this is the illustration I'm using, and this is what I'm going to be saying, and provide encouragement and feedback with that. So that's what I've been doing, and but there's certainly room for improvement. Always is.
Definitely. So, as someone doing discipleship in the church, working in a lot of different departments, even though you are the junior high director, how do you participate in self care?
Whew. Self care. These days, self care looks like some time alone with God for myself. Because something that I've run into is I study a lot. I mean, there's times where I teach anywhere from 4 to 5 times a week in like separate occasions, right? And I'm not preaching the same sermon, so it's like different subjects. So I'm constantly triple checking, quadruple checking that I am preaching God's word the way I should be, right? So I end up spending a lot of time doing that, and then catch myself not spending time with God because I have to,
Mm.
right? So self care at this point looks like intentional quiet time with God, not because I have to teach, not because X, Y, Z, but because I need Him right now. So, um, yeah, I think that's what it is. I wish I could tell you I go out and go horseback riding or do something or go get my nails done. But right now, in this season of life where my family is still adjusting to full time ministry, I mean, I do full time ministry, and my husband works part time for the church as well. So we're constantly there. We're constantly, like I said, picking up kids. He helps me do that too. And we're constantly being dragged everywhere. So quiet, intentional time is my self care right now. Otherwise, I'd go nuts.
Definitely. Um, what are some of the successes in ministry that you've been able to learn from?
Mm. What are some of the successes? You know, um, I would say that watching a student connect with God. That moment that you see the student, right? Because you can be doing discipleship weekly. Sometimes you wonder, like, man, am I reaching this kid? Like, am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing here? And um, does a kid even care, right, about God at this point in their life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and then you have that moment where you can tell it just clicks, whether that be at camp, whether that be in small group, whether that be, I mean, I've had students that have just come to me and just like hugged me and cried. And those moments are so tender because I know that God is doing something in their hearts. And I know that um, sleepless nights, right? A small group leader that may not have the time to disciple as much, right? However, sacrificed a few hours to just be with their students. Those moments are so special because it gives you some fuel and motivates you and reminds you like, okay, all right, Lord, you're in control, even when I don't see it or feel it. You're in control and you're doing it despite everything that I may be thinking. So I think those moments when I see them come to Jesus in a raw way at camp, in small group, or even one-on-ones when I have students that just the light bulb turns on. It's just so cool.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Um, and what are some of the failures that you've had in ministry that you've been able to grow from?
I think when I look back at these last 10 months,